It's just constantly creating content and suck at first. If you want to be great at anything in life, you have to suck at it first.
And you will suck at it.
That 100%.
Yeah.
That part's a guarantee.
Today in the studio, we have Matt Reed. Matt is a professor of practice at Moyne College, where he uses his experience as an advertising extraordinaire. You're extraordinaire today, Matt.
I feel like it.
To teach the next generation about advertising, PR, and creative theory. Matt is also a co-founder of Spatchcock Funk, where he leads creativity in the kitchen, combining dope food and strong drinks to tell great stories. Matt, super excited to have you in the studio, my friend.
I'm super glad to be here. This is awesome. I've been loving the shows. Kate, Jim, this has been great, so let's do it.
Let's do it. So, there's a lot of different things that we can talk about. I'm hoping to hit on a bunch of different things in this conversation, but I think maybe we should just kind of start with Spatchcock Funk and the inception of it, and maybe some of the trials and tribulations of starting just a business in general. And your business is, is a little bit unique. So
yeah, it is unique, and it's one of those things that there's not a clear path to it. So growing up in advertising agencies, and that's been done for a long time. I mean, you can watch Mad Men and kind of get an idea on how it works. Well, without the misogyny and that type of stuff, but the drinking still kind of exists. So what we did was originally Alex and I, my co-founder Alex DeRosa, wanted to, people would say, you guys should make a cooking show because we would throw these great parties. And we kept hearing that and then kind of feeling like, oh, we should, but it was like a kind of a back table conversation. So eventually we're like, yo, man, let's do this. So we made a we made a YouTube show. And we're like, if we get 500 views in a month, we'll keep going. But we got a couple thousand. So we kind of kept pushing it forward. And once we realized that we kind of built the brand out, having experience building brands, we felt good about it. So out of the blue, we got a break from a television producer here. And she was like, we'd love to put you guys on TV. Do you want to give it a shot? So we did. And then that started generating activity. And we had a business plan. Like we eventually wanted to get to be something like on Food Network or a streaming service. And there's no path to that really. So as that was growing, we kind of researched all these other people and we found there's so many different ways to go that route, like any entrepreneur business. So we looked at people like Molly Yeah and the Pioneer Women as two people that kind of came the same direction we did. And they were both bloggers and they kind of exploded. So from our standpoint, we're like, maybe this is our path. We've got some media experience. So over time, we talked to some other networks, started reaching out to us. And finally, PBS was through WCNY was like, hey, we want to give you guys the chance to make a half-hour show. So we signed a multi-year contract and we're in cities across the country. And the idea is, as we continue to grow in different areas, the brand keeps growing. So we're talking to places about licensing spice mixes and barbecue sauces. So it's really fun and it's cool because it is new and fresh and different. And as you know, starting your business, there's an exciting element to it, but there's a couple things that you and I were just touching on before we started filming. The entertainment industry is much different than other industries. And it's both refreshing and fun and exciting, but also, I don't want to say treacherous because it's super fun, but like we will have people that will offer advice. Oh, you guys should do a show like this or that. And we get a lot of recognition. Like this is embarrassing to say, but at least probably 4 or 5 times a week, someone will see me and take a picture for Instagram or want to talk about the show. And people will say stuff like, oh, I loved your chicken parm recipe, but next time you should use basil. And it's like, there's not gonna be a next time because we already shot it. So, and then moving to a half-hour creation format is a little bit different and trying to stay true. So the idea of it, right, is we want to throw banger parties, but we want the parties to feel like they're both exclusive and inclusive at the same time. So we talk a lot about each one of the half-hour shows we're launching on PBS has a different social justice message in each one. So one of the first ones we shot is called The Boss Brunch, and it is about how to throw a killer brunch. But the theme in it is we're celebrating my wife getting promoted to being CEO at Mower. So we use the intro and parts of that to talk about the importance of a lot of people don't even know what the glass ceiling is or women empowerment. So each show, we do a show called Tearing Up a Lake, which is an episode, it's a ripping boat party, but we talk about body positivity and sex positivity. So being able to be true to ourselves and authentic, I think we've done that really well so far, but that can be hard when you've got a lot of different creative inputs and people with a lot of input themselves.
Yeah. When first starting the company, especially an entertainment business, is so much different than, quote unquote, real business when you're selling things to other people. Because I can tell if I'm successful because I sold more things than it cost me to make those things. And there's actual measurements.
Yeah.
When you're starting an entertainment kind of business, how did you gauge success at first? Like, how was that process? Because, like, and from what I see on the outside in, like, it takes a long time to actually gain any kind of monetization. And so it's really tough to understand if you're going in the right direction.
Yeah, that's an awesome question. And honestly, I'm going to be always honest and transparent. The answer I'm going to drop now, if you ask me in like 4 months from now, it might be totally different. But the KPIs that we look at from the beginning, there's some quantitative and qualitative ones. The quantitative ones are the ones that you think about. So total views, shares, those type of things. And then once you get into television, though, it turns into ratings. And ratings are a lot different because people can change the channel and their ratings still count. So the hard data exists. And then the other hard data is sponsorships, right? So you have money coming in, and that's kind of valuable, obviously. So those measurements kind of exist, but are growing over time and they change. So what we used to do, our sponsorship prices have changed because we get more viewers. But the real big thing to me has been the qualitative measure. And you mentioned teaching, which is my full-time job, and something I love and I take great joy in. And I think I'm pretty good at it. I'm not great at it, but I think I'm facing the right direction. So when you're creating media, or like when you're speaking, which you've done in front of people and with this podcast, the measure to me is, are you having an impact on people? So that measurable feedback is people afterwards, like a student calling me 2 years after she graduated saying, I'm working on this dope project, you should check this out. Or someone in the grocery store saying, you know what, my grandmother makes egg foo young differently, but I thought yours was cool too. So that type of qualitative stuff is the big deal. And that's been one of the bigger measures. So when you combine that with views, that's basically the way that we're measuring it right now. So it's a really wild way to measure that, because when you have a product, I mean, even the stuff that you create or that I've created in the past, TV commercials and videos, while technically there is a product, if you're measuring it out, what you're really doing is you're selling ideation, right? And you execute that ideation. So when you put a price on it, we always struggle. You and I have both struggled with this. What's the value of this, And even though you get better at it, so your time gets less, so your hourly rate probably should be less, the value becomes better because you know more. So that issue is compounded with this, because now there's not a real measure. Like, you give something to a client, they run it, or a TV commercial, and then sales change. So, okay, cool. Here's a causal effect model on how this business works. For ours, it's like, let's put this thing out there. And then, you sit there and wait like a week or two and like, oh man, maybe that wasn't a good episode. And then all of a sudden emails are coming in or those. So it's a really interesting challenge to focus on.
I want to touch upon something that you mentioned as far as like the value at first. I think that's where you started, which I think is great. I see these YouTubers that have been around for years, and they're talking about how to make a YouTube show. And there's two different ways. One, you can approach it from a business, like straight up, like right from the beginning. And a lot of people just don't think that's necessarily the way it's going to work. If you treat it as monetary, it's probably not going to work, because the first 100 episodes that you do won't make money. Like,
Agreed.
It's just the fact of it. So you really have to figure out a way to love it and to enjoy it. So whenever I watch YouTubers that have been around for 10 years, their first advice is don't get into it unless you love doing it. That you really have to find joy in actually doing it and enjoying the value of it.
For sure.
Which I think is kind of what you're getting at from the beginning of it. You just wanted to make great content for people to enjoy. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, you said that really much more eloquently than I'm about to. So the bottom line is, you got to love what you do. And for us, I mean, truthfully, we were like, I remember we were pretty drunk on a boat, and we're like, man, if we could get paid to party and hang out, that would be awesome. So one of the things, and I agree about the two different approaches, the straight business approach, and there are some people, some entrepreneurs, and I teach them entrepreneur stuff at Moyne, are in it for the game, and that's awesome. They want to. It's basically it's gamification where they're like, cool, I created this business, I'm gonna move on to something else. So neither Alex or I are like that. So we're more like Eric Mower. That guy is an entrepreneur, but if you talk to him, he's an ad man. He just loves advertising. So we are super passionate about. I mean, if we're not filming, hanging out and cooking and drinking and carrying on, we're doing it anyways. So the other thing is about being passionate about the audience. So when you see, I mean, there are things, musicians, other podcasters, media people that I don't particularly, their style might not be my favorite style. Like Taylor Swift is a good example. I don't know her. But if Taylor, if you're listening, you should come on our show. She is an incredible storyteller, and creatively, she's obviously wide-ranging, but it's clear when you see her at the Grammys, like dancing and singing to someone that's performing something that's on there, that person just loves music. So if you go into something that you love doing and you're passionate talking about it, other people respond to that. Even if your level of skill, I mean, there are people that are chefs and media personalities and mixologists that are superior to what I do in every way. But I do think that the passion that we bring is not fake, and that I think that is the biggest part of it. So when at the beginning, I mean, having run a successful business that continues to grow, I have former students that work for you that love working here. They like being a part of it. At the beginning, you got two things going. You're trying to grow this business, and most businesses do not make money at first. And then you have the whole downward spiral, like, oh my God, how am I going to pay my rent? Like, what am I doing? And on the flip side, though, and you get that imposter syndrome, you start seeing clients react to what you're doing, or people that you work with just dive into creating a creative brief or whatever it may be. So that passion, I think, is the number one thing. If you have that, the other stuff can be learned, but you can't learn to fall in love with something. You know, my mother-in-law once said, probably when my wife was like, hey, I'm thinking about marrying this guy. And she's like, oh my God, well, you can't help who you love, right? So that can't be forced. So I think the authenticity of that is what drives most media-driven entrepreneurs.
Love that. When you're thinking about your business and the growth of your business, can you walk me through a couple of the big milestones that you hit through your company where you're just like, all right, we're making progress. Like, this is it.
Yeah, for sure. The milestones in the past that I've been a part of working at, like, in the agency side at like Syracuse, or, well, they wouldn't call themselves an agency, but like Mower and Digital Hive. You're talking about run rates, and you have client loads and hourly rates and achieved hourly rates. So that data is all pretty useful. For us, though, the revenue didn't happen for a while. And then we start making money, we're putting it all back in. So for us, it was clear milestones, and we've planned out milestones for the future. So one was getting onto a regular television appearance, and that was a really big deal. And then we thought, oh my God, we're on TV, we made it. So then from there, we wanted to work with like a couple really big brands. So we did projects and videos with Sam Adams and Tito's Vodka. So all of a sudden now we've got, and those businesses at the time and probably now are huge, right? So probably they shouldn't be doing business with such a small influencer that we were at the time. And then finally it was, our other networks going to notice that? And then brands started reaching out to us. So that milestone, and the next one is going to be the launch of the TV show. So the TV show starts in March, and then we'll have a companion podcast that will feature like a guest related. So we have a 90s theme thing. We're trying to get a pro wrestler to be one of the guests. And so that'll be a milestone. Another milestone that we're looking at is we're also at the same time working on developing a cookbook that goes with everything with the show and cocktails and stuff like that. So that publication will be something else we're working on. And as our show expands, like we've turned it into tracking milestones. Like we got this contract with PBS through WCNY, and then they provide carriage to other markets. So a big milestone for us was the CEO of the Denver PBS station, I want this show. And then Jackson, Mississippi, and Atlanta, and these cities around the country. Once that became a milestone too, that we kind of celebrated, but probably, it's funny because we have a show about celebrating, and the show is like, look, man, you bring your friends, we bring everything else, and we make up reasons to celebrate. So now Alex and I and our friends that we work with and our wives and our people that are all supporting this see these milestones where we should take a break and celebrate and partying, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're going to be in this other in Portland, Oregon. And then instead we're like, okay, but tomorrow we've got to get this going. We've got to write this. So you know how that is. So it's weird. You recognize the milestones and you should spend more time celebrating them. It's a weird animal.
Oh, I got a lot to say about this. So there's two different points. I'm going to go on a little tangent, and then I want to bring it back here. So one of my favorite, this is a self-deprecating quote here, but Elon Musk, love him or hate him, he has a a quote that says, I think he's quoting someone else, but I'll take it as Elon Musk's quote, where he says, like, being a CEO is looking into the depths of space with a flashlight and getting stabbed by 1,000 needles, right? That's what how he defines being a CEO. And basically what he means by that, as far as looking into the depth of space, is like, it's endless. Like where 325 goes, where Spatchcock Funk goes, where any business owner goes is endless. It can, I never thought it would be 10 people. I never thought it'd be 3 people, you know? So when I'm 50 people, is that it? Like, I have no idea. Like, I'm just keeping going into this void. And so what's interesting about owning a business is that when a client's like, this video was great, it's amazing, like, I feel like everyone else gets to celebrate that, but I'm just like, all right, cool. Like, the next one,
totally.
Right? So you don't really, as a CEO, get to really appreciate the wins because you're only seeing the bad stuff. Like, I'm only seeing how can we get better? Like, oh, they said it was great, but they didn't say it was amazing. Right. How do we get to amazing, right?
Totally.
And so I'm always thinking about that.
For the next project right away, so how do I know? Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I challenge myself to kind of see more of the positive. I think that's also, I think the superpower of a CEO is like being okay with not being okay. Like, we're just moving forward towards something and like understanding like, all right, like we're just moving forward. We're getting to another thing, but you don't get to really celebrate the wins and the milestones. I find that interesting that you kind of said the same thing about that.
Well, I figured most people that are like you and I and Alex and my wife for them, and people that work in these type of fields, I think that's just the natural way to go forward. But your quote was awesome. And Elon Musk, love him or hate him, the dude has dropped some knowledge and done some pretty cool stuff. So that quote, though, to me is interesting because the possibilities, man, the potential is endless. That's true. But potential means you haven't proven anything yet, right? So when something's endless, for us, my fear, and probably yours too, is, well, the possibilities are endless, but this could end very soon.
Yep.
We're super excited about the show, and I have a lot of faith in it and faith in the people that we work with. But there's a very good chance that this is going to show up in these cities around the country in 1 week, and people watch it and be like, meh, and then change the channel, and then it's all gone, right? So that, I think that kind of also balances like, oh, we should celebrate this huge milestone, because I think most people, as you definitely execute, and the people that have been on the show have executed, it's the fear of failure. Sometimes I think that I don't know, maybe I hate losing more than I like winning. You know what I mean? It's the fear of, okay, I set out to do this. And at first, another thing about entrepreneurs, and I think media people in particular, whether behind the camera or in front of it, you are creating something, and you have to be vulnerable and bare yourself. Like, I'm not saying like get naked, though. I mean, if this is that kind of podcast, I guess I would. But what it is like, okay, here's some cool stuff out there. And once you've put it out there, whether you've produced it or you're on camera, you are now out there, and people are going to, behind your back, say, oh my God, that no one's going to watch that, or like they're not doing, So one, you have to be ready to accept that. But a lot of people that want to be media entrepreneurs, or any entrepreneur really, but people that want to get in front of cameras, in front of faces, in front of households, they'll nervously be like, I want to be famous. Well, you're never going to be that way if you can't, be willing to put yourself out there. And as you know, you're going to get negative backlash no matter what. It's impossible. Like I tell my students, so Moyne College is a Catholic institution, so they have to take religion and so forth. And when they're talking about their fear of not being loved by everybody, I'm like, look, man, Jesus, we can agree, was a pretty well-loved human being. And that dude got crucified by people that knew him, literally crucified. So I think that's becoming one of those challenges that as an entrepreneur, like people will have dreams and the capacity to work. But as soon as they start to see a sign of like negative reaction or negative backlash, then that becomes a problem. And they kind of shy away from it. So I think that's the hard part that I think can be taught and learned, but being to be like, okay, here it goes, and you cross your fingers and put it in the world and see what comes back.
Yeah, absolutely. Historically, whenever they talk to the kids growing up in elementary school or high school, they're always ask them, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And usually they say policeman or police person or doctor or lawyer, some of these kind of positions. Yeah. But now you hear more and more that the number one thing they want to be is a social media influencer or some kind of online presence.
For sure.
But I also think that they're probably still had the same fears of like public, people making fun of them or not being okay in front of being in camera and stuff like that. So it's a big juxtaposition of how people feel and / what they want to be. So with that in mind, I wouldn't necessarily call you a social media influencer, but you are in that world.
Yep.
What advice would you give someone who wants to pursue that?
Yeah. So the first thing that someone should do is create as much content as they possibly can in every waking moment. And it doesn't have to be content that they share. So the first cooking show that Alex and I filmed was in his kitchen, and we made jambalaya, and I thought I told a good story. And dude, this video is like 27 minutes long, and I break a glove at one point. Like, it's terrible. It's atrocious. And no one's ever seen it. Maybe someday if we haven't deleted it, we'll share it. But it's practicing on your phone, right? If you're in high school or middle school and you're growing up and you love unboxing G.I. Joe guys or Barbie dolls, or you're like doing that type of thing, that's what you love doing, set up your phone on your dresser and practice. Because one of the things, there's two reasons why that's important. The first one is the most important one because it happens to me all the time. I don't know, we've made hundreds of episodes and we just produced 10 TV shows, and I've seen all of them, obviously. And every time I watch it, even if I'm feeling confident, I'm like, oh, we crushed this, dude. That was such a killer scene. Then I'll watch it and I will always think, oh, that's what my voice sounds like. And I'm like, or, oh my God, that's what I look like. And I still think that way, but now I've seen it so many times that I'm like, okay, this is what it is, you know? So one, it's getting that type of the confidence out. The second part though, is you need to just constantly pump out content to teach yourself that you can do that. Like, writer's block is a real thing, but it can be overcome by just like shooters got to shoot. So what a lot of younger than me, because I'm old, influencers will be like, yeah, I'm running out of ideas. And it's like, you can't run out of ideas. And I'm not saying like that, like you can't run out of ideas, like, but actually you can't. If you sit there and keep going with it, you can do variations of things you've done in the past. Music is a great example. Like some of my students listen to some good music, some not so much, but I don't know, maybe that's me being old, but they'll be like, oh my gosh, this is cool. I'm like, well, that samples these 3 songs. And then like one of them will sample a Biggie song. And then the Biggie song is actually sampling Slick Rick. And the Slick Rick song is actually, so what I mean? So you got to keep, if you have a great idea, use it now. There's nothing to hold back on, right? Like, oh, I'm going to save this till we do a contract with Budweiser. Well, you might never see Budweiser, or that idea might be done by somebody else by the time you get there. So it's just constantly creating content and suck it first. If you want to be great at anything in life, you have to suck at it first.
Yep. And you will suck at it.
That 100%.
Yeah.
That part's a guarantee.
Yeah. And I think that's true for any kind of, especially creative field. You have to just get all of the bad stuff out. I had a great screenwriter teacher. And basically, we would spend all this time, probably weeks, maybe even like a month, like writing a screenplay. We all submitted it, and he immediately just didn't even read it. He just like threw them all in the garbage. He was like, "This is all going to be garbage. It's supposed to be garbage. Accept that it's garbage. Move on." Wow. And everyone was so pissed.
Wow.
So we spent all this time, all this energy, all this, whatever. And the reality is, like, you might be right, might be wrong, but I did at the time think he was totally wrong, but now I think he's like totally right, because if I look back, that screenplay most likely was garbage, even though I thought it was probably the best thing, since sliced bread when I made it.
For sure.
And you just have to get it out there. And I equate everything to learning how to walk for first. When your kid starts walking, they're going to get up, they're going to stumble. Well, first you crawl, then you bump into things, then you roll, and then you get up, you fall, you get up, you fall. But eventually, you finally learn how to actually stand up straight and walk, and even that, becomes a little clumsy. But what they're doing is learning from their failures. So they're learning, hey, if I did this, that didn't work, let me try this. Oh yeah, this kind of works, let me do more of that. And you have to just realize that when you're doing the show and when you're out there in front of, and that's true for anything creative, but you have to learn how to be okay with failure.
And I love that you're saying that, because what I always think about is you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Trying new skills. But if you think about the two things that I think that you just made me think of is, number one, if you want to go into these type of fields, the one thing you should do both of these things as much as you can. Number one, learn as much about other people that have done it. And even if so I mentioned Molly, her show is awesome. It's much more feminine than ours is, but it follows a similar pattern. And the Pioneer Woman, also more feminine than our show, in a way different pattern. But going back and learning how they got their breaks, where they failed, where they made mistakes is huge. But not just in the field you're choosing. Look at other ones. So I read this great interview with this guy who I guess was the accounting professor for Lady Gaga when she was at NYU. And every Thursday, I'm paraphrasing this, so but you can find it online. He said that she would, as they were all walking out of class on Thursday, she would jump on her chair and say, "I'm playing at Finnegan's on 241st Street tonight. Be there 8 o'clock every week." And at one point, he pulled her aside and he's like, "Hey, Stephanie, you're a pretty good accountant, and if you took that seriously and didn't worry about this music stuff, you could be a pretty successful accountant." And he tells that story, and then he's like, and oh my God, how wrong was I, right? So even though that wasn't a failure from her, it's an experience that when you're creating content, there are going to be people that just don't like it. Like we mentioned Jeff Knaus, I don't know, earlier when we were talking, and when he was my boss and I was the CEO at Digital Hive, we had this project. And it's one of my favorite stories that I tell creative people. It was a big client, and it was going to be a big get for us. So we worked on this really cool creative campaign, and our team was proud of it, and I was proud of it. So we came in with the team, and Jeff sits down. The next day is when we're pitching this to the CMO and like 10 other people. So we throw it on the screen, and I'm watching it and look at him, and he's like, "I hate it." And I was like, ugh. So I was like, "Okay, well, listen. And I start explaining it, and he goes, "You don't need to explain it. I get it. I just don't like it." And I'm like, "Well, we've got about 12 hours, so let's see." And he goes, No. I trust you. If you think this is going to work, let's do it. If it fails, it's on you, and you're back to the drawing board." But he's like, so that type of thing is acknowledging that. So seeing that other people that have failed in your field or other related creative fields or anything creative at all. And the second one is be around other people like you, because I think about one of my favorite music videos was for No Rain by Blind Melon. And it's a little girl in a bee costume, and everybody's making fun of her. And then she shows up at the park, and there's all the other bees, and she's super happy. Many people that you interact with all consume content, but very few of them create it. So it doesn't even have to be podcasts, videos, art, right? Like a person that I always have fun talking to is Tommy Lincoln. And Tommy's great. Or
guest on the show.
Yeah. And he called me before he was coming on the show, and I saw that he brought gifts, and I should have done that too. So
yeah, where's my gift?
More power to Tommy. But being around those people is an important aspect of it. So find those people, seek them out, and the good ones that are out there will, even if they're more successful than you, will take some time. So I think those take some time with you. So those two things help you with that. You don't know what you don't know, but that's the biggest, I think, hindrance for a lot of people going forward.
There's a lot of different things I want to touch upon, but I want to stay on track here. I do feel like a lot of listeners and viewers of the show are thinking about getting more into social media content, either because they want to build their brand personally, or they want to build the brand of their company, or they want to be an influencer, whatever that means. Talk to me. I want to talk about two different things. One, I want to talk about how you first got some form of monetization, either in some kind of advertisement or just YouTube views or whatever you want to consider monetization. And then two, was there ever a point where you're just like, what are we doing? Like, does this make sense? Like, should we keep doing this?
Yeah. So those are great questions. Has there been a point where should we keep doing this? Yeah, Alex might have different thoughts on this. For me, there wasn't a time where I'm like, screw it, this isn't fun anymore, or we're not doing it. And I can be a pain, so maybe he's had times where it wasn't as fun. But there's been times like, is this worth keeping going, right? So how are we doing that? And that goes back to that monetization point. So before monetization, though, from a media standpoint, people like we mentioned Lady Gaga earlier, her playing when she's in college, I can't imagine she was making money, right? She's getting maybe $100 to go play a 2-hour show in a bar. Maybe she got free drinks. So at first you're going to lose money in it. But before you get to monetization, think about what are the things that are proof of concept. People coming back to her show multiple times. People saying, I've been watching your show. Now we had a person once meet us in a bar, and he was saying I was going through a tough time, and I didn't, he basically was implying that he was thinking about suicide. And he's like, but I kept watching. I just like sat all day and watched a YouTube channel. And I was like, wow. So that there's some of that keeps that stuff from changing. Or someone like saying, hey, my grandfather had Alzheimer's and he watched a show and he started cooking again. So there's some of that, but the monetization for social media is a really different thing. So first, people that are making YouTube, you have to have like 1,000 watch hours. So you need to create so many videos, have 1,000 subscribers. Don't focus on that monetization. That will come over time as long as you're creating the content and the content's good. So the other way to get the monetization at first, or when you know you're doing it, is I'll explain ours, but the first thing is going to be trade. So if someone's like, hey, I have some students, one of them, it might be Ari, I think, sent her underwear and like, hey, you have a great Instagram account. We're going to do this and you're going to be a brand ambassador. So at first, that's a brand recognizing that. And while it's just trade is monetization, right? Because you're trading some product for an activity. So that should be one of the first things to be looking for. And trade can, like for us, it was just people like, hey, we're not going to pay you yet, but we'll give you our stakes to use on the show. So that's one first start of it. For us versus other social media influencers, like TV is where our focal point is. And as we create our podcast, when we relaunch that, and YouTube, those are other monetization paths for us, but the TV is where that is. So sponsorships were important to us. And originally, it would be like someone paying us or giving us a free meal to go in and shoot some Instagram, right? So those things are the first steps to that.
I'm gonna stop you.
Yeah.
I think it's so interesting because you probably first got those, or like when your student first got like free underwear, that was just like, I made it. This is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, how does it get any better than this?
Yeah.
And then your things, your milestones change from there.
That's the next thing I was going to say. You're so right. What happens with that type of thing is as you go and change, and you grow, if you're growing, the value of those milestones change. So if someone now were like, hey, listen, you have this half-hour show in different markets across the country, we're going to give you free cola to put in there. Be like, no, bro, you got to pay to play in this game. But if that was 2 years ago, I'd been like, hell yeah, we made it.
Yeah.
So that you have to be able to change and grow with that. But at the same time, you also have to stay authentic to your brand because you're going to change the media, like the format changes for us. Like it was a YouTube show, could be 7 minutes long. Like that would be a long one for us. But then on TV in the news segments, it was 3.5 minutes. So then we still do that here and in Rochester. And then a half-hour show, you're like, how are we going to fill 27 minutes? Well, actually, dude, easily, right? Because you get 2 hours, like we can't cut any of this. So as that changes, right, how do you change and stay authentic to your brand? So as you get monetization, and you know this in your business, there are brands that you likely would not do business with because you ethically don't agree with them. And I'm not going to name any here, but there's a bunch for me. When you're first starting and one of those brands is like, hey, you want to do this, you're going to be challenged by that. So how do you stay true to that? And then also, be forgiving of not just the bad content you made, but stupid mistakes you made along the path and like learn from them. So that growing pattern all has to happen. And those, I think, kind of come with the monetization. Your life as a CEO and managing without putting pressure on any of the people here that work here, right? If things don't go well here, like other people's livelihood depend on your leadership. Like you're making decisions, and if it goes sideways, it's going to go sideways for other people. So it's trying to remember that and remember also your audience too. So it's a lot of different milestones. Monetization is important, but if you take care of little things, the big things take care of themselves.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I'll touch upon that because I truly believe what you just said there. So, Dave Ramsey, he's
I don't know him
financial
personally, but yeah. My sister's obsessed with him.
Okay, great. So I love Dave Ramsey. I follow his financial advice, but he also has like an entrepreneur class as well. And basically, he's a huge company, hundreds of people working there. And they went to a picnic, and it was him and his son. And they looked out on the picnic, and they saw all the people that worked at Dave Ramsey, but they also saw the kids. And sometimes even the kids and family members and all that. And he goes to his son and he says, see all these people? All of these people we're responsible for. And he told his kid, he's like, if you go and have a drunk driving incident and you kill someone or something like that, all of these people's lives can be affected by that. He's like, if I mess up, all of these people's lives can be messed up. And we have a team member with a kid, and I think about that all the time when we're kind of juggling what jobs do we take, like how do we keep the lights on? Because it's not just an exchange of payroll. Like there is real implications. Like what happens if 325 goes under?
Yeah,
all these people have to find new jobs, and they can't just find new jobs over the course of a year. They got to find a new job over the course of like a couple weeks, maybe.
Yeah. Specialized new jobs.
Yeah, specialized new jobs. And so all of their skills, all of their talent, all of their growth in this company, if that goes to zero, they're starting all over again. And I definitely think about that all the time. And I think as growing as a company, it's something, a new challenge that all of a sudden one day you wake up, you'd be like,
yeah,
I'm responsible.
For sure.
Because I still consider myself as a little kid trying to figure this all
Same.
out. But all of a sudden you're just like, oh, you know what? There's actually people counting on me, and I better get this right. So let me actually step up my game a little bit.
Definitely.
So I think that's a really interesting chapter. But there's one big topic that I want to talk about before we wrap this up. And I find media as a whole is just changing, right?
Yeah.
There's less and less people watching TV and going to social media. But I think what's interesting about this conversation and about the future is there's now social media influencers. I keep on saying that it's the easiest way, like easiest term.
Yeah.
Now actually going towards TV. Mr. Beast just signed a contract with Amazon for like streaming.
Yeah.
And now you are going to PBS and you have like a TV show.
Yep.
So like, why? And like, talk to me about like how media you think is changing.
So it's a really fascinating discussion, right? But media has always been changing, right? So, video killed the radio star. Now MTV doesn't even have music videos on it. And I think about, someone was once telling me, why am I going to start watching Netflix because I can get it for free on cable? Well, actually, you're not getting it for free on cable. You're paying for that subscription. And media now, the viewers are the product, right? Like the advertisers that fund all these things. The NFL, an incredible media animal. The product isn't just the players in the field, it's the viewers that are watching, so they can sell the advertising space. And while it's constantly shifting, the way that it seems to me is like, originally streaming was exploding because they were telling users like, yo, come on here, no advertising. But that's what Ted Turner did when he started launching cable. He's like, no advertisers. And it's like, oh, I'm leaving billions of dollars on the table. So as that's changing and the competition is it's up-leveling all the content. Like I loved Game of Thrones, and I also did not love the last season, and particularly the finale. But that being said, if you were to take just that last season and put it on TV 10 years before that, it'd blow out all of the water. So because there's so much content and so much appetite for content, being able to be adaptable across all mediums matter. But the one about the thing is with TV, you have a smart TV versus your phone, right? My theory is the less clicks someone has to do and download and check out, right, the more likely they're going to kind of stick to one platform. So TV, I think, is just the easier platform, whether they're streaming off their phone onto it or not. And the other thing too is what's the content that's leading into that? Like, what's the gateway drug? So in TV, and it still works beautifully, like they'll take a popular show, another one they want to make popular, and they'll put that on first so the viewers, maybe I'll check this out. And the same with YouTube or like Reddit. How often have we fallen down YouTube rabbit holes? And like, I don't know, like one time we were talking about incorporating a skateboard into something. And I used to skate growing up. So I was watching these videos, and all of a sudden, like an hour later, I was watching a video on dogs riding skateboards. I'm like, how did I get here? So once someone gets engaged, that the media platform video will always be king. And whether or not virtual reality and those type of things, augmented reality, come to pass at the level that people think it might, it's still a visual experience. So whether it's TV or your just online presence, I think those are going to be interchangeable. And you see people like Pat McAfee, and I love his show and his podcast, and there's other places too where that translates really well to TV. And I believe going into that, if you think about it, like what anybody that's listening to this that wants to do social media or media stuff, is make sure your content is transferable. Like I try to teach my classes, hopefully well, in a way that all the skills that you learn about leadership or advertising or public relations are transferable to a romantic relationship or a friendship or anything. So your content should be transferable, and that's why you keep seeing people cross streams. Huge TV stars also have podcasts. The Kelsey brothers, right? Like I wouldn't be shocked if that ends up becoming a TV show, It's wild, but it's a really fascinating beast to see change.
All right, Matt, well, we wrap up every show with 3 questions here. So what's your favorite book or a book that you want to recommend to our listeners and viewers, and why?
Okay, so there's a couple of them. And I know you probably want one, but I'm going to give you 2. If it's just life in general, I would recommend The Road by Cormac McCarthy. It's a quick read, and it's super devastatingly upsetting. It's about the end of the world, and it's a father and a son just trying to survive when the world is collapsing. Super upsettingly good in a good way. For the media people, what I would read is the oral history of Anthony Bourdain. And he doesn't appear in the book because it's written after he passed away. but it's from the middle of his career as it rises up and all the people that are around him. So it's good to identify, not that we'll ever be as big as something like Anthony Bourdain, but you'll see the different pitfalls that people can fall into as a human, and then also like what a huge role your friends play. So probably that would be the best one for a media person.
All right, I never heard of that. I like that.
It's good.
I read both of Anthony Bourdain's books.
I'll send you a link to this one. It's awesome.
Okay, good. All right, so you've been doing this for a while now, and you've been living it for a long time, just media in general. What keeps you passionate? What keeps you going?
So for me, I think about a lot of people in life seek something, right? And some people seek money, and there's nothing wrong with that. I have a friend of mine who makes a lot of money, and that's his goal, and he's an awesome father in person. Some people seek power, people that want to be CEOs of companies or mayors and elected officials. Nothing wrong with seeking that. And I thought I wanted those two things. But what I found over time is what drives me is influence. So a former student calling me about a project that she's working on, that brings me great joy. Or someone saying, hey, we made your turkey for Thanksgiving, man, our family loved it. So for me, it's having a positive impact on others. A lot of times we all feel bad about ourselves, and something like that will just, kind of change my day. So for me, it's influence.
Last question is, what excites you most about Central New York today?
Central New York is a growing area that not just, you have population growth, which is pretty crazy. Since COVID, Syracuse is the only city to grow in population. But really, for me, it's the creative birth of different things. So you're getting like the Salt City market. So we're doing better with diversity. But look, man, Syracuse is not diverse. People say it is. We got to get way more diverse. And there's efforts there, but the creative diversity is growing, like shops like this, and we talked about Tommy earlier, and people that are kind of old guard people like you, like Dean Joseph, or I wouldn't say the mayor's old guard, but those people are welcoming and accepting of this change. So it's the positive growth that inspires this area, and I think it's nothing but good things are coming forward.
Great. All right, Matt, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
So if you are interested in learning more about Matt, you can follow him on LinkedIn at Matt Reed, and you can definitely check out, and I encourage you to check out Spatchcock Funk. You can check out their website at spatchcockfunk.com, or you can watch their new series on PBS every Tuesday at 9 p.m. And be sure to follow In the Studio with 325 with more conversations with extraordinary people like Mr. Matt Reed every Monday.